we're going to give a report on the recovery efforts related to the flood items. I know it's been some time since we've updated you, and we wanted to let you know where we are and the various items that we're currently working on. So Dale's going to bring it up. I will start, and we'll move forward. So as council knows, we've been moving through the work at Royal Mobile Home Park. As we indicated, there are two components to this process. There is the public side of it that we're working on in terms of the property and the storm drainage improvements that we need to make, and then there's the individual assistance process that we're also assisting the individuals with. But that work is primarily being done between FEMA and those individuals. As we indicated at the last meeting, we did receive letters from the governor's office. Dale, you might want to go on. I think I'm moving ahead. So we did receive the letter from the governor's office in terms of the individual assistance that we have been talking about. I know that those individuals are going through the reinspection process, which is associated with the FEMA rules and regulations, and we're hoping to hear the outcome of that in the near future. What I can say on that issue is that we have a very dedicated staff that has been spending a lot of time with those individuals, making sure that we're keeping the case files together and that we're moving through the process. So, you know, Tracy and Kathy have done an outstanding job moving through this process. You know, we hope that this works in the process we're in. If it doesn't, then we will keep plugging away to make sure that we can provide all this. We can work with them to receive all the assistance they possibly can through the FEMA process. It is definitely a complicated issue, and as we have learned through all of these processes, there are a number of points that we just have to circle around a little bit and ask the correct questions. Next slide. Are there any questions about the individual assistance and the progress that we're making on the Royal Mobile Home issue? Okay, Dale?
Mayor Combs and members of council, I'm Dale Rademacher, Director of Public Works and Natural Resources. I'll give you a rapid-fire update on Public Works and Natural Resources infrastructure projects that are underway. So there's about 7 major categories that we're working on. The roadway construction up the Longmont Dam and Rock, the raw water supply pipelines, irrigation ditch diversions, sewer lines, wastewater treatment plant, bridge repairs, and damaged park and greenway facilities. Other than that, everything's in great shape. So we are on our way. And so this is a picture that Nick Wolfram and I took. I think it was in October, a few weeks after the flood, standing on Highway 36, US 36, looking down on the North St. Vrain, looking down on where there used to be a road called Longmont Dam Road and County Road 80. And so this is what it looked like then. You can see the river was sort of like a natural and scenic river. So this is what it looks like as of a couple of weeks ago. We got a little more snow, but we got the road, we call it our Jeep Road, is built, and the river's somewhat back into its channel in that area. Similarly, standing here, again, this could be a postcard kind of picture for a wild and scenic river. The little detail is, though, we needed a road. So, again, we've been able to establish the roadway back up to our reservoir, and we gave our contractor, and again, I can't give enough accolades to Scott Nix, our local contractor, who we gave 30 days from the date that we opened those bids to get us up to Ralph Price Reservoir, and he did it. He got us there by November 23rd, and you know, we were, suffice it to say, pleased and happy about that. So this is a picture of the culvert just downstream of Longmont Reservoir that was completely washed out by the flood. And again, we've been able to clear the culvert. I should say we. Scott and his crews have been able to clear the culvert and get the road rebuilt back over it. Mayor Pro Tem Bagley will remember some of this. This is where we were walking that day when we went on our little hike. And that's the culvert that is now, the road is built back through that area.
Correction, point of order. You mean when we got lost?
Some of us got lost. We were, it was a test. You know, we were all lost for a very short time, though. And here we are standing at the control house at Ralph Price Reservoir, which is what our goal was. So our goal was to get there in 30 days. We got there. Our next major goal is to keep working on the roadway to get it built higher and better. So here we've got Representative Foote and our city attorney Eugene May and our mayor Coombs and Harold. And what I find interesting about this photograph is everybody's looking in a different direction. So I wasn't sure which way we were trying to head at that point, but we were bound to find a roadway. I think we were all trying to look for the best path up, and everybody's looking different. So here is that culvert that I showed earlier. This is standing on the roadway looking back at sort of the damage of the river that went through there. You can see all that was left was the concrete culvert itself. And those little things down there are people, and you can see the backhoe trying to push the dirt back up into the culvert. So the spillway road going up to and above, up to the top of the dam is still damaged and is still closed. It experienced severe damage, and it experienced it in a different way, actually, than what the rest of the road did. Along the spillway, there's probably a 20 to 30 foot almost vertical drop-off because of the water coming down through the spillway. It sort of eroded down to the granite. And so that's one that is still a challenge that we need to keep working on. We have come up with a design, and so we know how we're going to repair the road. That engineering is into its final stages. We hope to be bidding it soon. Our goal is to have that road completed in January so that we can start removal of the debris on Ralph Price Reservoir. So
Dale, let me jump in real quick. If you can go back to that last picture. We have placed jersey barriers in this location because of safety issues in the state of the road. So that is blocked for access for our own employees and for some folks that live back in that area, but we're concerned about safety issues at this location.
And so this is Longmont Reservoir from probably a day or two after the flood. It was still flowing very high through there. The good news is the dam held, built back around the turn of the century. Did its thing. It didn't wash out. That's where our major diversion is right at that little dam. And here's where we're now working. So we got about 27,000 cubic yards of material. So if anybody needs any fill dirt, we have it. But actually, we need every yard of that plus more to rebuild the road. And working with the Corps of Engineers, they were able to understand that we need to take the material out of the reservoir and put it back on the road where it came from. And so we're fully permitted to do that, and that work is underway. It is going to be a slow process, though. That's probably going to take us 2 to 3 months to get that debris removed out of there, because the deeper we go, the more difficult it gets to get it out of there. This is just above the reservoir where there's a diversion pipeline, and again, Scott Nix and his crew, they build roads, they remove debris out of neighborhoods, they also fix pipelines. And so here they are putting in a new stretch of pipeline on the diversion that goes around the reservoir. This is going to be the diversion that we're going to use to bring water in. And what I can report to the council is that as of yesterday afternoon, at about 3 or so in the afternoon, we finally started putting water back into that pipeline. And so I consider that to be the first diversion off of the St. Vrain since about September 11th. And it's not coming to our treatment plant yet, but stay tuned. My hope is that if not tomorrow, the next day, we will be once again reestablished with water diversions out of the St. Vrain back into our community. Again, that was one of our major goals to get to, and to get to before the end of the year. So we barely made it, but we're going to make it. So this is the debris that's still at the upper end of the reservoir. Again, it's primarily beached now. We've lowered the reservoir down, so it's sitting on dry ground, but it is tons and tons of trees that need to be dragged, pulled any way you can out of that reservoir so that they don't float and either block the spillway or, worse yet, sink and go down to the outlet. And so this is why we have a very continued sense of urgency to get the spillway road repaired so that we can get into the backside of the reservoir. Again, I think we're going to be there within 30 days, 45 days, and really get after getting these trees out of here before runoff and before we want to refill the reservoir back up for next summer. So this is a picture of the Oligarchy diversion. So the Oligarchy ditch is the major ditch that goes through the north end of the city. It irrigates parks like Garden Acres and Clark Park and Carr Park. It fills reservoirs like McIntosh and Union. It is a key facility for the city. We are a vast majority owner in this, probably in the 60 to 70%. So this shows the diversion on the Oligarchy, and this shows the Headgate, both of which, in the case of the Headgate, destroyed, in the case of the diversion, severely damaged. So this is another sort of a good news story between the city and FEMA. We started this out in talking to FEMA that their story was if you didn't own it, they couldn't fix it, or they couldn't reimburse you for it. They always asked who was the legally responsible person or entity for that facility. And so through this process, we've been able to work with FEMA and sort of educate them about Colorado water law and how things work in our state, and that there are things called private ditch companies. There's things called private water rights that are public or private property that are owned by people, including the city of Longmont, and that these facilities, even though they're privately owned, serve a public purpose. And so FEMA came around and they said, okay, that makes sense, and so we will reimburse so long as you use the water at your treatment plant. We said, well, no, that's not quite what we mean either, because it's more complicated than that. We can take it by exchange or by diversion or by a transfer along the river. And so then we got them to move to that next step where we said, okay, we will base it on ownership. You can track that. There's records. It's easily known, by your shares that you own in the company. And so that was another sort of a successful movement of FEMA. And then finally, and I really got to give credit to this to Sean Cronin over at the St. Vrain District. He kept harping on it doesn't, if the city only owns 10% of a ditch, it doesn't make any sense to build back 10% of a headgate or 10% of a diversion. You got to build 100% of it. And he stayed on that message. And we supported him in that, but we were trying to not get the golden goose too unhappy. But suffice it to say, they agreed. And they said, yeah, so when it comes to the headgates and the diversions, whether we own 1% or 99%, FEMA is going to consider it 100% eligible for reimbursement. So Council, what that means is millions of dollars of federal money coming not just to the city, but also to the local farmers in the St. Vrain Valley. So again, if you stay with things, sometimes they do work out. So moving to roads, we have one road closed. It's Sunset Street. It is a federal highway route, and so we're working with the Federal Highway Administration, who has informed us they don't have a lot of money. And their first response was, well, city, just fill in that big cut and open that bridge back up. I don't know about the council, but in my mind, that doesn't make a lot of sense. It seems pretty obvious that Mother Nature has told us that we might need a bigger bridge here. And so we're not taking that offer. We're going to stay with it and say, we want a bridge. We believe this community needs a bridge that will pass a 100-year flood. And so the city and the county, it's still owned by the county. We're working together on that. We'll have to keep you updated on how we work through that, but suffice it to say, if we're going to build it back, spend the time and money to do it, I think we should build it in a way that we think will actually last. Just another picture of the Sunset Bridge. So now moving over to facilities. So here's our treatment plant, the wastewater treatment plant. It got flooded. Again, it was offline for about 48 hours. It came back online. We're back to permit level very quickly, but it did sustain quite a bit of damage to the buildings. Good news is this is the administration building. It had to be completely gutted, all the drywall taken out up about 3 or 4 feet, obviously all the flooring, all the furniture. Our staff are still in trailers out there, but as you can see, making good progress. They hope to be back in their facility probably within 30 days. And so very happy with the way that's moving along. Our parks facility was also flooded and damaged pretty heavily. It is now going, the bids have been awarded, actually not awarded. We're still working through some bid issues with the 2 low bidders on that particular project. Talking to Don Whoopker, who's overseeing this project, he's given them 60 days to get the project done, and so that we can get our park staff also reestablished back in their facility before the peak summer work comes at them again, so that they're not sort of nomads working in a variety of buildings around the city. So parks and trail closures, this is sort of the laundry list of ones that are closed. What we are doing is we are working on the trails sort of in an approach to open up trail segments so that people have a place to go to and from, so they're not dead ends or they don't go anywhere. And what I think is going to happen, I think over the next 30 to 90, 120 days, we're probably going to whittle it down to where the part that's closed is unfortunately, though, the core part of the Greenway from about Rogers Grove to Pratt Street. That is the most damaged area through that stretch. We're working hard to get the other segments open on things like Likens Gulch and Left Hand Creek, the other areas along the St. Vrain. As you go east of the city, though, as you go east of 119th, east of Longmont, out to County Line, out to Sandstone, that's going to be a while. There's a whole different sort of landscape out there, and we're trying to find a big suspension bridge to get over our Mississippi River out there, but we will figure out how to get across it. We're going to have to probably take a different route with the trail to connect to the Sandstone Ranch historic house, but that work's underway. So here's Left Hand Creek, just upstream of the Pratt Street Bridge. You can see the damage to the trail. This is just a couple of days ago. Again, we're in there getting it repaired. We should be getting concrete poured and placed as soon as we can. If the weather will hold and we don't have 20 degree below weather, we'll continue to make progress on that through the winter. Again, here's Main Street. This looks pretty bad, but I think it's an area that we're going to be able to tear out and get reestablished sort of in that phase 2 of work. So early next spring, we should be able to get that open back up. So the next steps, I hope to erase that first one here pretty soon on reestablishing our diversions from the St. Vrain. We are continuing to plan with economic development for that river corridor. I can't honestly say I've had a whole lot of engagement in that yet, but we will as soon as we sort of get our feet grounded on some of the major capital stuff. The debris removal out of the river is still an issue of concern. In particular, the gravel debris that's in the river. And, the good news is I think FEMA is going to work with us maybe even more broadly than they're used to in other areas of the country, because they're starting to understand the unique nature of a flood in the western part of the United States and the characteristics of those floods and bringing this huge granular load into your channels. Now, whether or not we're able to get them to do the whole thing, I don't know, but we are also working with the NRCS, which has told us they have about $20 million to bring into the state of Colorado now, which is up from about $400,000. And also, we're working with the CDBG DR funds. So our goal is that we're going to be able to match city dollars with these federal dollars and come forward with logical projects to get the stream capacity reestablished.
And let me jump in on the CDBG DR dollars. As I indicated in the I believe it was the last council meeting, we had a meeting with our 2 senators, the governor and the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. Following that meeting, they gave all the impacted areas a brief needs assessment to fill out, and gave us 3 or 4 days to do it. And again, pat on the back to the staff that worked on it. They did it, and they did a great job. But in that, we essentially were asked to rank what are the major issues that we're facing as a community, and so I wanted to go over that ranking for the council. The number 1 item that we put on that list was restore water supply, which entails County Road 80, Longmont Dam Road, and Button Rock and the dredging that Dale mentioned earlier in the presentation. What he didn't say is that in addition to all the trees, or you may have said I didn't hear it, but the granular debris is there's about 40 acres of granular debris with a depth of about 30 feet. And so what that means for us is 1,200 acre feet of capacity that is displaced, and so that's still a significant issue for us to deal with. The second item that we put on that ranking was river rechannel and removing the granular debris. That is going to be a significant undertaking. Again, that is an issue that's still at the top of our list, because with the spring thaw and additional rains, there is a probability that we could see high water again, and we're dealing with a separate issue. The third item that we put on the ranking was housing for those impacted by the floods. And fundamentally, we're also talking about just the housing needs in our community and how we weren't able to help those individuals. The fourth item is water and sewer connections. The fifth is roads and bridges. And the sixth is parks. And we went beyond that, but I wanted to cover the top six in terms of what we put in the information that we sent to the state related to the CDBG DR funds.
Thanks, Harold. And I hit some of these other items, the bridge replacements and the greenways. So our current number now is around 150 million. If you guys remember, we started at 148. We got some good news. We lowered it down to 132. Well, now we're back up to 152. And like I say, this is going to continue to gyrate a little bit as we get better information, as we move from preliminary assessment into design, and you get a much firmer idea of what it's really going to take to repair things. I'm hopeful that it won't go higher. You know, the biggest number here is still the river and the repair of that river. And what we're shooting for here, this isn't just repairing from the flood. This is trying to get the channel to where it can carry a 100-year storm. And we think that that's the best message to be taking, whether it's to the state or the federal government or anybody that will listen to us, that we don't want to just reestablish the St. Vrain to where it was on September 11th. We want to get a river that will protect our citizens and protect their businesses and protect the lives of people here in Longmont, and that takes more effort. And so that's part of the reason that number is big, because we think that now is the opportunity to keep moving on that.
Councilmember Bagley.
Thank you, Mayor. Just real quick. So will that 98.25 million, in theory, if the flood that happened 2 months ago happens again, will that money, or will that amount of money and those upgrades, so to speak, enable us to accept, receive, and handle that?
Correct.
Okay, so when you say 100-year flood, it means what we just passed through, we can handle that again.
It was more than a 100-year flood.
That's what I mean. That's why I'm asking.
But it will, let's put it this way. There may be some overtopping when you go beyond a 100-year, because we're designing everything to the 100-year. You know, our choice would be maybe go to a 500-year. But that is a phenomenally more expensive and phenomenally larger project. I still think, from a sort of a statistical look at things and a risk analysis, if you go to a 100-year storm event, I use the term, your systems are hardened to a point where they will perform very well. For instance, Left Hand Creek, I think it also probably experienced greater than a 100-year flood, but it performed very well. It had some minimal damage down in that channel, but we didn't have flooding of homes on any large scale. That's really what we're shooting for. So we're not shooting for everything's perfect.
Gotcha.
But
So
we're shooting for safety and loss of major property loss and damage.
So to be clear, it sounds like this amount of money will cover us for a 100-year event and then insulate us from a 500-year event.
Correct.
Okay,
Put us
thank
in a
you.
much better position. So, Council, you've increased the storm drainage fees effective January, as well as the park maintenance fees, $2 of which sunset after 3 years. And those funds will be critical in order to meet our FEMA reimbursement levels, as well as to stay on track with the overall system upgrades that are needed in both of those facilities. Our rates are still competitive. Again, this is comparing us to 2013. I have read that Fort Collins is raising their rates significantly. I haven't heard about Loveland yet. You know, we're all waiting to see what Loveland does, but I do believe Loveland experienced some flood damage as well. And so, you know, not that that's necessarily crucial or important to Longmont citizens. I think what's important is to know that we are competitive and reasonable. Every increase we have, though, I think causes concern for folks in our community. So this is the FEMA reimbursement process that we've been going through. And as we've always reported to you, it's worked very well at the local level. It's working better sort of at the FEMA state level, and we're making headway and progress, I think, even at the national level. The worksheets are going in. They're typically getting approved by FEMA fairly rapidly, and funds are getting deposited back with the state. We have to submit a reimbursement request and a packet back to the state in order to get now the money from the state back into our city coffers. And I think our accounting and finance folks and Dan and I don't know who all is working on that, but Sandy, Oh, submitted yesterday, so,
Yeah.
again, so I don't know, Sandy, you might want to give us more detail on
Here
that.
comes members of council, Sandy Cedar, Assistant City Manager. So we've kind of gone back and forth with the state, being one of the first cities that are actually asking for reimbursement at this point. They're sort of still working on their SOPs as we go. So we asked for the funds, they sent us a contract. We sent back the contract, it took them 3 weeks, and they had it signed. Once they signed the contract, then they sent us another packet. We filled that out in 2 days and had it back to them yesterday. Our understanding is that that packet is the final and appropriate dispersal packet to get hopefully money, so that hopefully the next move back to us is a check.
So in the next piece that we're waiting on is there are some tracking requirements that go along with the process, and we're still waiting for those tracking requirements to be defined. But we've been told it shouldn't impact the reimbursement based on the fact that we've submitted the packet. But there's another piece that we're going to have to move through.
Councilmember Finley, do you want to ask a question now?
I did, but you can finish if you'd like.
That was my last
Okay,
slide.
great. I've had a number of people ask, even retired city employees, if there is a way they can help rebuild the Greenway.
Great question, yes.
And they really are vested in that, and they really want to help, and some of them are eminently qualified to do so. Do we have a plan to have them help?
We, Mayor Combs and Councilmember Finley, I know Kim Sugar over in our Natural Resources Division is working on developing sort of a volunteer program and a volunteer corps. We are getting a lot of offers for that. And so I know she is looking at the greenways and even in some of the parks that have been damaged and trying to come up with sort of the appropriate work that folks can do safely without getting injured. So the answer is I would direct them to Kim Sugar over in our natural resources area. And she is pulling together that volunteer program. And you can also, obviously direct them to myself, I'm sure, or the city manager's office, and we'll make sure that they get connected.
The second question that I get asked frequently is, when will Sunset Street be fixed?
I get that question as well, and we are intending to go to the design on the bridge in January. I don't believe it's going to be open in 2014, though. I think it's going to take an entire year, if not longer, to redesign, permit, and build that structure. And so what I've been saying is look for a 2015 reopening of the road. The irony is I also get some comments from folks that live there that sort of like the traffic being down. And so, we're going to hear comments as soon as it opens again, and all those darn cars
people
are.
forget that it's there by then.
Yeah, exactly. They might, right?
And also, when you're lost in the mountains, you could just head downhill. Usually that's what.
I did.
Oh, we did, until you get to a
Till we hit
cliff.
the cliff.
That'll.
Also on Sunset Bridge, wanted to say that, and this is for public information, the reason why we looked at this, I believe the number for the temporary fix was in the neighborhood of $300,000. So based on, we didn't want to put $300,000 in and then have to rip it out. And so that's a big part of the reason why we're just moving forward with the permanent replacement.
While we're talking about bridges, I think it's also, we're going to have to do a really good job on our communication, because over the next couple of years, we're going to be rebuilding Main Street, we're going to be rebuilding Pratt Parkway Bridge, and we're going to be rebuilding Sunset. It's going to seem like the flood all over again, because the construction that's going to be going on in that area of the city is going to be phenomenal. We're going to have to try to set up as good a detouring and signage so we can move the traffic and move people away from those areas. But suffice it to say, I think it's going to be difficult driving around Longmont for the next couple of years.
Councilmember Santos?
Thank you, Mayor. Dale, and thank you for the update. But it's also incumbent to remember that while we need to focus on these very important items that we need to repair and do, but something has stuck in my head since the very beginning that you talked about was, while we need to work on the items that are in the city limits and at Ralph Price and Button Rock, we also need to be engaged, and you guys are doing a great job doing it, outside the city limits and west.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys have met with members of Congress, the state, and feds. So, I understand that there are some with other smaller districts that are having some difficulty with perhaps the county and trying to get some coordination, especially on Left Hand Creek. That one concerns me the most. Things are moving well on the St. Vrain River, but I think Left Hand Creek is kind of maybe being ignored. So that's my concern.
So, Mayor Combs and Councilmember Santos, thanks for reminding me, and you're exactly right. We absolutely need to focus west. And so to that end, Boulder County is working with us on the St. Vrain Stream team, and we are together with the county and the district and the city identifying the breaches of the river that need to be repaired first, and also how they need to be repaired. And so that's been a very collaborative effort. The county is about to open bids on those repairs and the debris removal. And so that is a key item that needs to get done before next spring. We are also developing contingency backup plans. And so if for some reason those breaches don't get repaired to a level that we believe will hold, we cannot allow flooding to occur again through the neighborhoods in the Greens and the Champion Greens and the Valley subdivision. So we are working on contingency plans to prevent that. That can be implemented quickly if need be. We've learned a lot through this flood. And with regards to Left Hand Creek, Councilmember Santos, we do have some interest on that because obviously that creek does drain into the city. And so maybe what we ought to do is also engage with the county on that particular drainage way and to sort of check in to see how is that progressing and is there some sense of both a sense of urgency and a sense of purpose on what needs to get repaired.
Because my understanding, the county is taking the approach of the smaller districts need to fix what they need to fix and not really taking the lead of coordinating that. And
they're not developing that same relationship.
Correct. And what's the adage? It all flows downhill. And it all flows through the city of Longmont. So my concern is that if those aren't built correctly, it's going to flow through Southmore Park and through, if we can repair everything we need to along Left Hand Creek. But if they haven't fixed what they need to fix further west on left hand, we're going to be in trouble again.
If I can add a little bit to that, and definitely we will move forward on it. We also have been engaging with the town managers. Actually, today we met with the town managers from Estes and Lyons, and then Aiden, who's from Evans, was supposed to be here, and he got busy, but we're also trying to communicate on a regular basis. Some of it is commiserating with each other.
Sure.
Some of it is, a big part of it is learning from each other, and then another piece is really talking about how we can help each other. And so we're having really good conversations, and there's some things that we think we can work on as a collective. So definitely trying to do that, and we will work on left hand.
Sure, thanks.
I was just curious, once we turn on the water from Button Rock Dam, get that flowing through the pipe, will we be able to turn on our little 1 megawatt hydro plant in Lyons at that point too, or what's the status of that?
Mayor Combs, sure. I think, actually I say that sure is, I think I saw it. Is your power connected all the way to hydro? So yes. He says he just needs some water.
Okay.
So we'll try to get all the rocks out before we send it through the Pelton wheels at the hydro, so.
All right, thank you.
Well, thanks.
Okay.